Well, hello, geeks, freaks, and all those unique. This is Emcee Frodis. Well, I've been begging for weeks for a Hammer episode. What makes this even more frustrating? This wasn't even an actual Hammer episode. In this, the penultimate episode of Strange New Worlds, All Those Who Wander, we're dealing with the Gorn threat again. Uhura's unsure of her path. Again, Spock needs Chapel to be his emotional backpack. Again. And then, since the first of my deep dives, I've been talking about the connection of grief and loss. Somehow, I completely missed that the thing that would absolutely completely galvanize our found family as a found family is the loss of one of their number. So, my bad. I really should have seen that one coming. Maybe I was fooled by the fact that so many of our characters have plot armor. Basically, everyone except Hemmer, Lon, and Ortegas appeared later in the original series, and I was lulled into a false sense of security because they hadn't done anything really with Hemmer and Ortegas yet, to the point where it has become a frustration to me. The killing off of a character is always a delicate balance. It's one that Star Trek honestly doesn't have a great track record with. The first time Star Trek killed off one of their main characters was, funnily enough, with a main cast member from this very series. In Wrath of Khan, Spock died in order to save the crew of the Enterprise. We can even see foreshadows, of that death in Hemmer speaking to Uhura and Spock through the glass, and giving the Talal. One has to wonder if Spock even thought about Hemmer in those last few moments of his life. The power of Spock's death is undercut a bit by the obvious door that was left open for him with the mind meld with McCoy, and the shot of his coffin landing on the Genesis planet. Both of these plot points would be picked up again in the next film, The Search for Spock. So his presence on my list is mostly because of how memorable it was for being the first. It's also probably the best example. Viewers had known Spock for years, and his death was devastating, but also meaningful and touching. Brace yourselves, because it's downhill from here. The next time a main character dies in Star Trek is in The Next Generation. We're introduced to Tasha Yar, an encounter at Farpoint, the security chief on the Enterprise D. She's swallowed by a giant oil slick and spat out because it was bored and evil. Her death is acknowledged in universe as being senseless and unfitting of a hero. For viewers, they were shocked at losing one of the main characters so soon into the show. However, Denise Crosby was unhappy with the lack of good stories for her character, feeling like an extra as opposed to a main character. While she didn't have many good stories, she was developed as a character in the 23 episodes she was featured in. There was a depressing loss of potential with her. Tasha would return in an alternate universe episode, Yesterday's Enterprise. It seemed like she was getting the heroic death she would be robbed of as in Skin of Evil. A later episode revealed that, instead, Tasha was enslaved and forced to become the consort to a Romulan general in order to spare the crew of the Enterprise C. She would be executed when she tried to escape with the daughter she bore as a result. While Yesterday's Enterprise stands as one of the greatest episodes of the franchise, Tasha's second demise was hardly better than the one she suffered in the Skin of Evil. Deep Space Nine would continue the dubious tradition of killing off main crew members. For 6 seasons, Commander Jadzia Dax was science officer to Ben Sisko, as well as serving as his best friend with the memories of his mentor as a result of her joint Trill status. During the height of the Dominion War, she would even serve as commanding officer on the Defiant, while Sisko went undercover. She was a member of the Klingon House of Martok, as wife to Worf, and a worthy warrior in her own right, but none of this would save her from a random attack. When praying in the Bajoran temple that she would be able to bear a child, she was attacked by a Pah-wraith-possessed Gul Dukat and killed. While the Dax symbiont would be saved, and Jadzia's memories would move on to Ezri, Jadzia herself was gone. This death would be just as controversial behind the scenes as it was in the story. While there were many conflicting stories over the years, the version that seems to be the most accurate is that actress Terry Farrell was being bullied and harassed by Rick Berman. Because of this contentious relationship, they were unable to negotiate a renewal in her contract, and Berman let her go. One of the most controversial elements in the very controversial finale of Enterprise, These Are the Voyages, was the death of Commander Charles Trip Tucker. As with the others, save for Spock, his death seemed to be senseless, something that could have been avoided with just a few seconds of thought. When rescuing the daughter of Shran, her kidnappers managed to breach the Enterprise. Trip took it upon himself to lure the kidnappers away from Captain Archer, setting off an explosion in the plasma junction that killed the kidnappers, but at the cost of his own life. Unlike many of the others on this list, this death was not a part of any behind-the-scenes strife involving the actor, but merely a provocative act for the final episode, trying to amp up the tension of what was a really boring and uninteresting finale. It was senseless in every way, not even having a valid behind-the-scenes reason. In the first season of Star Trek Discovery, fans would be shocked by the death of Dr. Hugh Culber at the hands of Klingon sleeper agent Tyler. This was a brutal murder of a character who, while only reoccurring, was an important part of the crew as Doctor, and personally as the husband to Paul Stamets. Culber's status as one of the first gay men in the franchise would be the real source of the problem in his demise. Star Trek had gone without gay representation for so long, it was painful for the writers to fall back on the bury your gays trope. To combat this, Culber was brought back by means of space mushroom science magic. He was upgraded to regular status and has been there ever since, making him one of the only characters with more of a role after his death than before. So much I actually forgot to write him in the original script and just added him in now. While not a regular character on the show, Ariam was an intriguing character in the backgrounds of the bridge scenes on Star Trek Discovery's first and second seasons. Her unique appearance made her something of a curiosity to the viewers. We finally got a background for her in the episode Project Daedalus. She was a human, cybernetically augmented, in order to save her life after a shuttle accident. Ariam was also shown to have been popular with the crew, having a particular kinship with fellow cyborg augment Detmer, and having a great deal of affection for Tilly. Unfortunately, this development for Ariam would only come in her final episode. With her cybernetics corrupted, she was only able to wrest control of her body long enough to beg to be vented into space in order to not endanger the away mission she was on any further, and allow Control to get the sphere data it sought. Ariam's death would have been much more impactful had it not been perfectly evidenced. The only reason we were getting into detailed backstory was because her time on the show had come to an end. Lieutenant Shax is the angry and violent Bajoran security officer of the USS Cerritos. Through Season 1, his appearances were brief but memorable. His zeal for destruction seemed chaotically at odds with the religious Bajorans. He managed to form a sweet mentorship with Ensign Rutherford, calling him Baby Bear and supporting his want to transfer back to engineering, despite his talents in the security field. His death was not treated as a tragedy, but rather a triumph. Shax was able to save Rutherford from being killed by his insane holodeck creation Badgie, and instead himself ignited the bomb to attack the Packlids, finally getting to blow something up as he had been wanting for the entire season. For a show so insistent on comedy, Shax's death was laced with emotion still. In Season 2, Shax is back without a word, as our focus characters work on the lower decks and aren't privy to the details. Shax would tell Rutherford, shaking him to his core, but the viewers were left in the dark. Along with Spock, Shax's death is probably the most satisfying, even leaving out the fact that both of them came back from the dead. In Star Trek Picard, Elnor is a young Romulan refugee who befriends Jean-Luc Picard after the Romulan supernova. He would become a Quat Malat as a young adult, binding his sword to Picard to locate and protect Soji. After this mission was over, he became the first full Romulan in Starfleet. During his first assignment on the USS Excelsior, he would be swept up into the parallel timeline by Q. Here he would be shot and killed by the husband of that reality's Annika Hansen. A brain and physical scan of Elnor would be used in a hologram, which would allay Raffi's fears she had caused Elnor's death by guilting him into going into Starfleet. This hologram would be short-lived, though. However, Elnor would be revived for real in the final act of the dying Q, using the last of his energy to bring the crew of La Sirena back to the present, real timeline. Elnor appeared briefly in order to assist the Stargazer from his place on the Excelsior. What's the reason for talking about all of these characters from shows that aren't Strange New Worlds? It's to understand what's happened in this latest episode, to find out if this was a good death for Hemmer. One of the things that plagues deaths on Star Trek is behind-the-scenes strife. which we don't have in this case. Bruce Horak was well aware his time on the show was a limited one. Interviews since the episode aired have also made it clear he'll be continued to be used in some capacity, although it's unknown what it is yet. Hemmer's death is also given emotional heft, as his demise comes from pushing Uhura out of the way of a Gorn attack, hitting him instead. Hemmer is also well aware of his situation and chooses what way he's going to die, going out into the cold weather, so much like his native Andoria, and throwing himself willingly off of a cliff. Before he leaves, he's able to offer words of comfort and wisdom to his friends. If these two things are true, then why is my reaction? This was too soon to lose Hemmer. He had so much potential as a character. We don't know anything about his background, or even much of his personality. He was still a mystery to us, one of the few characters in Strange New Worlds who didn't receive a focus episode. Even this episode does not focus on Hemmer, with a bulk of the emotional beats coming from Uhura and Spock. For all of his major episodes, Hemmer has served as a mentor to Uhura, and while I do love their dynamic with one another, there could have been so much more to his character than just someone to prop up Uhura. And I say this as someone who adores Uhura. Rather than his own fully developed character, Hemmer felt more like Uhura's version of Uncle Ben, spurring her into remaining in Starfleet, rather than running away and becoming closer to the version we see in the original series, rather than the closed-off version we've seen so far in Strange New Worlds. So with all of that said, I didn't love it. I felt like a promising character was cut short. But then, there's a beautiful tragedy in that. Everything we've seen from him was wonderful, and even his demise held something of that. And isn't it realistic that sometimes someone dies much too soon? It's sad but true. Hemmer spoke of the Aenar belief that they live until they've fulfilled their purpose, and Hemmer's was to fix what was broken. Season 1 of Strange New Worlds has shown us the emotional damage our main characters have suffered. Hemmer's death was the first time they came together and shared grief, and I think that grief is going to serve as the final binding of these particular characters as a family. But the actual episode, I didn't love it. Parts of it were fine, nothing terribly exciting for me, as I thought Memento Mori was a better Gorn episode. With that paired along with the shocking ending, I felt very cold. Uhura's ambivalence about her Starfleet career felt a bit out of nowhere, as she hasn't brought it up since Children of the Comet. I would have liked for her to have shown some more hesitance in episodes like Ghost of Valyria or Memento Mori, especially with all of the danger she had been put in those episodes. Spock's conflict with his emotions feel like nothing new for him, and thus is pretty uninteresting. I would also like to see Chapel serve in a role other than as his emotional support nurse. Yes, she's been afforded a few badass moments, but mostly it's, "But Spock, how do you feel about it? Let me be your friend while secretly being in love with you." We have one episode left in this season, and I have no idea what's going to happen. And I'm really sorry Hemmer is not going to be around for the rest of the ride. Rest assured, I'm working on a lot of fanfic that Hemmer has a prominent role in. I would also like to start the campaign for #HemmerForKelvin4. If his prime counterpart is dead, then damn it, let's see a version of him from the alternative timeline. So comment down below with your thoughts on Strange New Worlds, all those who wander. If you like my videos, subscribe to my channel. I do videos about Star Trek, Star Wars, and lots of other geeky stuff. If you want to support me, please visit my Patreon. You can also buy me a coffee, or you can go to my Redbubble and TeePublic and buy my geeky graphic designs. So until next time, live long, and may the Force be with you.